Welcome to Photosynthesis and Cellular Respiration, an EOG 8th grade science review. The transfer of blink drives life on Earth. Of course, I'm hoping that you at home shouted with enthusiasm, energy! Energy drives life on Earth. Without the transfer of energy, we have no life on Earth. The process, of course, that drives this life on Earth is photosynthesis because, as we've said many times, all energy on Earth comes from where? The sun. That bright beaming ball of heat and light in the sky, the sun. The sun is full of radiant energy and thermal energy. Heat comes down to our plants, our autotrophs, and they absorb that radiant energy and transform that into chemical energy, which is then passed through the food chain to everything else. That process is photosynthesis. So again, the reactants are on your right and the products are on your left. The reactants are carbon dioxide and H2O, water molecules. So the carbon dioxide and the water molecules are bound together by bonds. The radiant energy from the sun comes down. It makes those bonds vibrate faster until they break. And then those atoms of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen rearrange themselves, get new dance partners, and form the molecule glucose. That's that C6H12O6. That is your product, and oxygen molecules. The glucose molecule is made up of 6 plus 12 plus 6 atoms, which equals 24 atoms. And as you know, all atoms, are constantly in motion. So imagine the amount of energy that it takes to hold 24 atoms together and keep them from going every which way. Versus carbon dioxide, which is just 3 atoms, 1 carbon and 2 oxygen. So a lot more energy is in those bonds of glucose than were in those original chemical bonds of those much smaller 3-atom molecules. So all of that energy is stored there because energy cannot be created or destroyed. So it came as radiant energy, is now stored as chemical energy, so it's transformed energy types. And in your previous grades, you knew that as sugar or you knew it as energy molecule, but right now you should know it as glucose, C6H12O6, which is the energy within a plant. And then, of course, oxygen, which we appreciate. Photosynthesis is conducted not just by plants, though. It's also by bacteria and protists, so algae. And all those together are autotrophs. Auto means self or one. Troph has to do with eating. So autotroph is making your own food. So it's self-nourishment. That's any of those photosynthetic bacteria or plants or protists. All that is done in the chloroplast. The chloroplast is the plant food factory, as I like to call it. That is where photosynthesis takes place. We watched this video in class, and I encourage you to watch it again. It's a year in carbon by NASA. If you just Google that term, it'll come right up. You'll notice that that red area, that is the concentration of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. And hopefully by now you're aware that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, meaning it's a contributor to global warming and is caused by the combustion of fossil fuels. That's a really fancy way of saying burning coal, natural gas, and or petroleum. So, of course, the countries that do that are your industrializations like us, China. That's where you're going to see a lot of that heavy red being produced, and that's carried by those wind patterns throughout the planet. You're also going to notice that there is an increase in certain times of the year over other times of the year. Hopefully you notice that the increase is going to be in the winter months. That's when we need more heat, when we need more light, when the sun is not providing us with daylight till 9 o'clock. So we turn on our lights and our washing machines and all of the things at 5, 6, 7 o'clock. And that releases a lot more carbon dioxide in the air. Also, we don't have photosynthesis happening. Our leaves have fallen off our deciduous trees, and there's a lot less photosynthesis occurring during these winter months because there's a lot fewer evergreen trees and plants. That said, so there's nothing to soak up that carbon dioxide and transform it into glucose and oxygen for us. So it builds up in the winter, and then you'll see as spring and summer arrive, suddenly all that nasty red starts disappearing. Thank you, Mother Nature. So again, in photosynthesis, the reactants are carbon dioxide and water, and of course, radiant energy from the sun, and the products, what's produced by this equation, are oxygen, which we really love, and glucose molecules. Moving on, cellular respiration. I asked you before and I'll ask you again, what do you think this means? And if you said cells breathing, no. No, 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 no. What it is what cells do to break up sugars into a usable form of energy. So they take that glucose molecule that has all of that chemical energy in it and that oxygen, and they break it down into simpler molecules. Carbon dioxide and water and ATP. ATP is still chemical energy, but it's chemical energy that every cell in your body is able to use readily, so it's really quickly available. It's adenosine triphosphate. That ATP, you know it's energy because it's got the squiggly lines around it, which is, of course, the universal sign for I have lots of energy here. So, hopefully you're looking at this equation and saying, that looks familiar to me. Well, it's because it is. It looks basically like the reverse of photosynthesis. So cellular respiration and photosynthesis are, of course, connected. It's a cycle together. The light energy comes into the chloroplast in a plant, bacteria, or protist, photosynthesizes into glucose and oxygen, and then it goes into a mitochondria. It's eaten. Those plants are eaten by something. And then the cellular level, the mitochondria breaks down that glucose into carbon dioxide and water. That's why I inhale oxygen. And I exhale that carbon dioxide. So you're exhaling carbon dioxide, which means it's a product of cellular respiration, and also that ATP, which is used by every cell in my body. So photosynthesis, reactants, are carbon dioxide and water. H2O products are, of course, oxygen and glucose. They take place in the chloroplast, and that converts radiant energy into chemical energy stored in the bonds of the glucose molecule. Cellular respiration, on the other hand, the reactants are glucose and oxygen, and the products are carbon dioxide and water. That takes place in the mitochondria. The point here is to convert chemical energy in bonds of glucose into ATP, or the chemical energy currency of the body. I want you to think of cellular respiration. The reason that your body takes in oxygen is then delivered through the blood to all the cells in your body. And if you were to cut off that oxygen, if someone were to come up and choke me out, right, I'm going to start losing function in my brain and my eyes. Everything's going to go dark. My body isn't going to be able to struggle as much. So the first thing that's going to happen is my muscles aren't going to be able to move as fast. And I'm not going to be able to fight them off after a while, even though I'm still alive and I'm still conscious. That's because my muscles are not getting oxygen molecules that they need. They're not getting that ATP, I'm sorry. They're not getting the oxygen that they need to break down the glucose from the food that I've eaten and convert that into ATP, which gives them the energy to do their job. The job of my muscle cells is to contract and to move and to get this person off of me. So they're not able to do that job without that delivery of oxygen and that cellular respiration to do their job. So my muscles are going to stop, and then my vision is going to go out, so the cells in my eye stop being able to do what they're supposed to do, which is take in light and convert that images and transfer that to my brain. And then eventually my brain and my heart are going to go out because they're not able to do their jobs. So again, that's the oxygen that gets delivered by breathing through our blood, which also then carries the glucose, right? We test our blood glucose. That's how you make sure that you don't have diabetes, or if you do, how you keep it in check. Right? You're checking that glucose levels and those oxygen levels always need to be up, but not too high, so your body can take apart those molecules and convert them into ATP so that your cells can do whatever it is their job is to do. Digest your food, move your muscles, think, beat your heart. And if you cut off the oxygen or you cut off the glucose, you're not going to have that chemical reaction occurring. So, again, this was photosynthesis and cellular respiration, an EOG review. I hope you enjoyed it.